Welcome to Kentucky Horsepower, the official podcast of the Kentucky Automobile Dealers Association. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Kentucky Horsepower, the official podcast of KADA. I'm Jason Wilson, president of KADA, and joining me today is our chairman, current year chairman, Joe Cummins, Joe, your days are numbered. I don't mean to sound negative there, but the year is almost over.
It's winding down, Jason. I told you our last meeting, y'all might have to impeach me. I don't know that I'm ready to leave. We're so thickly involved in things right now.
We really are. And well, look, thanks for joining me today here from as we put this together. I thought it'd be good for us to sort of do a year-end recap because we had a really active and busy year this year. There's no shortage of things going on right now, and I thought, let's sort of talk through with everybody sort of what the last year looked like and what we've been doing and working on and kind of what we see moving forward. So with that, let's start with our 2023 legislative session. And those that went to the district meetings, those that went to convention and whatnot are familiar with this, but we think it's important to kind of go over some of these items again because it was a lot. And as you know, Joe, it's a very busy session to include weekend conference calls and everything else with all the stakeholders involved. But I think we got some good things done. And first, before we get into details, what were your initial thoughts on this last session and your involvement?
Well, there's so much going on. It's seems like every year just picks up more and more momentum and more issues that we're dealing with right now, critical issues. And as we get into those, we'll shed a little more light on those. But again, just the importance of being involved in these. Our DC trip was beneficial. I think we planted some seeds that are now surfacing that we see coming to fruition. That it's a good thing that we're trying to stay in front of them. And a lot of issues that we're facing. And I think we're all probably nervous about these license changes and all the things that we're going to be affected by here coming up at the first of the year. So I said, unfortunately, government timing was like trying to clean the deck of your boat in a hurricane. They threw this at the end of the year, our busiest week. And
that's a good point. And we'll talk a little bit, and I'll provide a bit of an update on where we think we stand with this KBIS transition and the electronic registration tiling. But let's start with, again, sort of our legislative, what we were able to get worked out this last session. And we'll start with Senate Bill 163. And there were a number of things in there that were important to us. We wanted to clean up some language as it relates to direct sales specifically. And, this bill prohibits the manufacturer direct sales and requires retail reservations to be assigned to dealers. Now, that was important because there was some question of, consumer just being able to make these retail reservations go straight to a Ford or GM website or whatnot. So that was something that was really important to us. And you spent a lot of time with us on working through that language.
Right. And we sure don't want to bypass the dealers. We all know what that means.
Yep.
And then the remodeling or facility changes that we put in there.
Yeah, so I mean that's a great point. And look, part of the language we put in there, and it actually is now in KRS 190.070 for those who are scoring at home here. Manufacturers may not take any acts indirectly that they may not take directly, and we felt that was really important language to have in there because that addresses the concern of creating some sort of an offshoot type company or trying to blur those lines and say, well, we're not really doing this directly. So this sort of really buttons that up, and that you can't do anything indirectly that you can't do directly, which makes things very clear with this. The 10-year thing, that was a big deal. So manufacturers may not require alteration to the same components of a dealership within 10 years of an alteration to those components. And what we'll do is we'll have a link on this as well, folks. So when you get this email, if you want to just have that handy so you can be familiar with it, we'll have that on this as well. See what else did we want to, this was one that was important in that it expressly provides that military members are not required to have a Kentucky driver's license to register a vehicle in Kentucky. How that came up was beyond me, but we fixed that to ensure our military members would be able to register vehicles in the state of Kentucky. As a former military person myself, and having lived in we military guys, we keep our driver's licenses based on our home of record, and we can be stationed anywhere. You still want to be able to register your vehicle accordingly, and so we were able to make sure that was taken care of. And Joe, one of the things we talked about are this coming session, some of the things that we're going to need to look at fixing to be cleaner as it relates to titling and registering of vehicles.
Right. Yeah. And a reminder, just to backtrack here for a second, it was KADA's efforts that got us the military exemption in the state of Kentucky for taxing, because the surrounding states were allowing it, and our customers were running to those states to avoid paying the tax that we didn't allow them to be exempt from in Kentucky. So again, it was KADA efforts that changed that.
That's right. And again, why it's so important just to continue to be engaged with the association, because look, one thing that was big too, Joe, is that we really did have a lot of help amongst our dealer body as a whole this last legislative session, whether it was making the phone calls to the offices, writing emails, having them visit the dealerships, those sort of things. Speak to that. How important did you see that in our efforts?
Oh, tremendous. To be able to pick up the phone and reach these guys. And then when we make our visits to them at their office, they recognize us, they're in tune with us. And the meeting we had was at Andy Barr, where he was there was so much information that he gathered from us that he was totally unaware of that we face. And the interest he had in knowing what our business is about.
Absolutely.
So again, it's that personal engagement that when we need them, being able to pick up that phone and call them and get their involvement.
And that's a great point.
In the world.
Both at the state level and at the federal level, to be able to have those relationships for our federal delegation, which we'll talk about momentarily as we get into a little bit of this FTC ruling that came out just in time for Christmas for all of us.
Exactly.
We'll talk about that. Let's see, what else I want to talk about. House Bill 150, again, focusing on franchise dealer rights that are further protected. Addendums to the franchise agreement are expressly included in the statutory definition of franchise. Manufacturers must permit dealership owners to be able to propose a succession plan versus waiting until the event to happen and then do it. We felt that was important, Joe, because we know there's been dealers and groups that have had issues with succession, and we felt this was important.
Yes, and there's several of those on the horizon right now. So
that's right. Dealers now have 30 days, increased from 15, to protest the termination of a non-renewal of a franchise. That was just important, I think, and that was one, frankly, we didn't get a lot of pushback on, because it's really, that was more of a common sense fix, don't you think?
Right, I do.
And then recall work is included within the provisions related to the audit limitations for warranty work. Manufacturers must have evidence of fraud or misrepresentation by the dealer to audit more than 12 months following a claim. So we felt that was important as well. And again, I do want to call out a couple of folks that really helped us move the ball forward on this. One that comes to mind is Transportation Chairman Blanton, who took on that role this last year. We continue to have a good relationship there, and really leadership there helped. That Transportation Committee helped us quite a bit, and that they really seem to understand our issues and what we're dealing with.
Exactly. It's important that as Ken Upchurch stepped aside from that position, you were able to capture a relationship with him right off the bat, and utilize that relationship to get these things pressed in there.
Yep. So, that was sort of the first quarter of the year, if you will, first part of the year. And as we're sort of taking this walk down memory lane, we also had a lot of news on EVs this year and
Yes.
what that's looking like moving forward. And there was a lot of buzz early in the year as far as these new EV mandates being proposed, this push on EVs and everything else. But boy, Joe, what a difference not even a year makes in things seem to be pivoting a little bit. What are your thoughts at the ground level? What are you seeing? You're getting some EVs in. What's your organization covers a large part of the state. What are you seeing as far as EV demand goes in general? And to be clear, if I didn't mention this earlier, Joe's part of the Don Franklin Automotive Group. So again, a large group that is throughout the state.
But I think we're all seeing that pushback, and just exactly what we've talked about from the very beginning is that the public's not ready. And again, we could sit here and rehash forever the issues that work against it. But as we see these things, again unfold, we're seeing, no demand.
Right.
Probably one of the best looking EVs that we offer is the Blazer. The one we've got sitting at our Chevy store here in Somerset hadn't had the doors cracked. Nobody's interested. And now there's a big recall on those because they're having software issues. It just seems like our Hummer that was so popular has had some major issues, as bad as I hate to say it. So there have been a lot of issues with them internally as well. But again, just that lack of public demand where the manufacturers have failed to let the market drive the demand, the level of interest in them.
Right.
And as a result from the government, pushing them. And I think our efforts to get in front of them and talk about slowing it down, maybe we're seeing a little bit of that now. Ford's, as you mentioned earlier, as you and I talked about the plant finding, maybe some use for some of that space that they've got that may not need for battery production, and
There's
across the board.
definitely a lot of movement there as it relates to these commitments built on the building of EVs in the plants. There's a lot of moving parts here. And look, I think we saw it really start rearing its head as far as a pivot in September when we all went to Washington, D.C. and
Yes.
met with our federal delegation. We had a number of issues that we talked about. And folks, for those of you that don't know it, boy, we are fortunate in Kentucky to have the leadership that we have representing us in Washington. They are full. Every office is fully engaged. When KADA reaches out and wants to make them aware of an issue or has a question or asking for support on items that are concerning to our dealers, they are right there every step of the way. Talk about that, Joe. Talk about what your thoughts were on our meetings in DC. And again, carrying on that EV piece as far as sharing with them sort of our thoughts here and what we're seeing in Kentucky.
Well, it was a warm reception. I felt like when we go in their office and go meet with them again, we've got those personal relationships we've built, and it's like it's wide open doors, and they're very interested in what we have to say. And again, it's that relationship that made it easier to go talk to them. The interest was sure at a high level from them on what was going on and what they could do to help. And I think maybe, I don't know if the House of Representatives, where they met to try and, push this back a little bit was a result of what we talked about when we were there, but it sure doesn't hurt. Just making them aware of what's going on. And again, we assume that they know, but they don't always know because we can shed our interest, we can bring them the information from our side that's a whole lot different from what they hear, just out in the public. So again, I think it was great meetings, a lot of interest on their part. And again, I felt like it was very, very beneficial. You can get that feeling when you walk away from something that you wasted time. And I did not get that in any of our meetings. So, I really felt like we had some benefit from what we did.
Look, I've been going to the Washington conference with NADA for years, both here in Kentucky and then during my time in Virginia. And I agree, Joe. I felt this was one of the more productive ones. And I don't think it's a coincidence. For those who don't know, when we go on these meetings, so does every other state in the country. So you have all 50 states, the metro associations there as well, giving the same message. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that you started seeing some action at the House side as it relates to these EV mandates and whatnot. So it was productive. And, as we go through the year, this and into next year, this is not an issue that's going to be definitively solved one way or another. I think it's a work in progress, and that speaks to our country's energy policy as a whole. And that goes to the point of elections have consequences. And depending on what happens in 2024, I don't, I would not be surprised to see a very different change in approach versus where we are today. And we're already, again, starting to see that pivot because what if anything we've learned from this is that consumers still need to be the ones driving demand, not government.
Right, exactly. And to add to our meeting in DC, it was well prepared. We had our information and we were ready to talk to them with valid points and pertinent points and very well laid out. And so we didn't just go in there just to chit chat or shoot the breeze. We had it all laid out and was very well organized. So
yeah, and they were genuinely interested. I think what we had to say.
Yeah.
Look, and our delegation, of course, is Republican, save one Democrat. But everybody, as it relates to at least this subject, was pretty much in agreement that this was what the current administration is proposing is they're going too far too fast. That's sort of the wording that NADA using. These mandates go way too far. It's way too fast. We're not ready for it yet. But I think the other point and what we heard last year out of NADA the last couple of years was we're all in on EVs, which as a dealer body, dealers will sell whatever the consumers want. They're there to sell what the consumers want.
Right.
So new technology, dealers have been all in on new technology for generations. That's what dealers do. They bring these new things to market, but the demand has to be there.
Right. You have to be ready for it, and just within the GM community, quite a bit of change in context from the GMC Buick dealer meeting in Vegas to the Chevrolet one that was held after that, where you could see the tone shifting away from EVs a little bit and bringing up the ICE, the combustion engines more, it was very encouraging to hear them talking more about the ICE than the Buick GMC, meeting context was. So again, that switch in thinking, and a lot of times they're slow in coming around, but we're seeing all our manufacturers maybe take a little bit different look and approach to it. So it's what we need.
It is what we need. And look, as we get to the latter part of this year, look, KADA organizationally, Joe, as you know, had a really good year. We had a great convention, and it was a productive year for the association, both on a legislative standpoint, but as a both that and as well as a growth standpoint. We continue to grow in members, both in our allied members, our preferred partners, our vendor partnerships, our sponsors for our events. All that has grown, which puts KADA in a really sound financial place to the likes of which we haven't been before and will continue to grow. So, Joe, talk to how important it is for, again, the dealers to be involved, whether it's going to district meetings, taking meetings with these sponsors and vendors that KADA is dependent on for a lot of our revenue.
Well, it's just like I mentioned, the relationships, it's picking up that phone that I mentioned earlier. It's critical. We're all seeing, it just grows and grows as the association grown, so has the need grown.
Right.
And the need for involvement has grown. And what we face next year is, who knows, but we certainly know that if we don't stay on top of it, we're going to get run over by manufacturers, the government, and everybody included. So it is just a constant battle, a constant, we've got to be vigilant and we've got to be involved. And it's more important than ever that everybody be involved.
Well, and that's the key. There's a saying that I'll take from my time in Virginia that who pulls if we all ride. We need people actively engaged. Most now over the last few years have become members. We still have a few folks out there that are not. We need everyone to be a member. They're getting the benefit. Everyone's getting the benefits of all the work that's being done by leadership at KADA, by those, and so they need to be engaged, pay their share to be part of that, so we can continue to do these things. So if you're listening to this and there's someone that hasn't been engaged or maybe isn't a member, and again, that list is really small now. We've had tremendous growth over the last few years. forward this to them. Now's the time to get involved. We need everybody involved.
Yeah. Again, if we don't stick together, we're in trouble. No battle was won single-handedly by anybody. So it takes a team, and it takes a group effort to be successful.
Yes.
And now more so now than ever. Again, that's just and I didn't realize that until I went to my first meeting years ago. So again, you see, by being involved more from the inside, and the information is so critical, so critical.
It
Um,
really is, which sort of takes me to as we sort of wind down our year here. Of course, the FTC vehicle shopping rule that came out really just a couple weeks ago here, and it's problematic in a lot of areas. Of course, now what started as a vehicle shopping rule has been renamed and to the cars rule, which tells you all you really need to know about the mindset of those putting these items together at the FTC. Combating auto retail scams is what they have that stand for, which right away just insinuates that the car dealers as a whole are scammers, and but for the FTC, the consumer would not be able to fend for themselves and navigate purchasing a vehicle.
Yeah, we're always painted as the bad guy, but again, we do so much for communities, and our legislators now are aware of what we do for all of our areas and our communities, and it's a result of being in front of them that they know that. But again, the Federal Trade Commission seems to neglect that point. And again, we're painted in a bad light by them, and so it's up to the association to try and go to battle on this, and that's obviously going to be a national thing that we fight through NADA and KADA, and try and get this thing pushed back some. But
yeah, and that's exactly right. KADA is uniquely involved with this as well, just because again we speak about our delegation. I will tell you all just before this podcast with Joe. House Oversight Chairman James Comer was in this office talking about this rule. We set up a meeting as he was home and here in Frankfurt, and he was kind enough to spend some time, really a good hour plus with us, kind of going through all the issues and problems with this rule. And for those of you who may have missed it over the holidays, he's already opened an investigation on this. And what today's meeting about with him was sort of getting into greater detail of the various issues. And we'll be sending more things out. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that, but there are a lot of issues, not the least of which is the how in some aspects this new rule is vague. It actually conflicts with Truth in Lending, the Truth in Lending Act. It does not provide specific direction as far as creating criteria of what would be considered a violation or not violation as it relates to consumers purchasing dealer add-on items like Gap, for example. And the other thing that is very concerning is the violations, right? What they're proposing on this, and this goes in place July 30th, 2024, to comply or face fines of $50,120 per violation.
That's scary. I mean, this is one of the scariest things that's come along in a long time.
It really is.
And there's the paperwork, the regulations, just the hurdles that this is going to create. Well, it just mind-boggling. It's just really makes me nervous, and I think any of us that think about it would be nervous about what will come within this. So,
yes,
it's something we're all going to have to pay a lot of attention to.
So we are fortunate that we have, between our relationships at NADA, the fact that we have the chairman of the House Oversight Committee in James Comer, who is completely engaged on this, and it is going to be very helpful to us on this in trying to adjust this. Move, again, it's an overreach in all of our minds. But part of the issue with the FTC is the FTC is able to make these type of decisions unilaterally, and they have a lot of power.
Right, and don't overlook how important it was for him to come spend over an hour with you in your office. He came to you. And so you had his undivided attention where you all could cover this. And again, that's so important.
Yeah, it really is. And again, it just speaks to the importance of the dealer body as a whole in the Commonwealth of Kentucky by the jobs that you all provide, the economic impact you all provide every day in this state. It's recognized, it's appreciated. It's what allows us to do things both at the state level and then working with our federal delegation as well. Joe, as we sort of wind things out, I want to give you the opportunity to sort of, say any I don't want to say last words. That sounds a little ominous, but as we wind down the year, if you'd like to share any thoughts, anything you'd like to say, the floor is yours, sir.
But last word, you know how I have a hard time keeping my big mouth shut sometimes. So I'm sure in our meetings, I'll find ways to get some opinions out there one way or another. But it's been a great year, Jason. It's been an honor and a thrill for me to be able to participate and to be chairman. The things I've learned that being in on the inside is always better when things are changing. So it's been maybe a selfish benefit for me on that point. But again, it has really shown me what how the association works, and being a part of that again has been one of the greatest honors in 50 plus years in the car business for me. So, and the dealer involvement and the dealers that participate in this, that at our meetings and on the executive committee, have just phenomenal people to be around. And it's just a thrill and an honor to say that I'm on a committee with them, because just some great names of dealers who I have a lot of respect for, and again, just honored to be part of. Just whatever small contribution I've been able to make was sure an honor for me, and just a thrill, like I said. So maybe this podcast on my part wasn't as entertaining as Tim Allen on Outdoor Man's blogs, but we have more serious issues to tackle. So,
That's true.
and again, I've said so many times, it's still ever changing. We still have more things on the horizon, and it is critical, like you said, for our involvement. And that brings me to the point of the cadets, our cadet
Yes.
fund, and how much benefit that is, because part of this is giving those checks to help support these legislators who support us, and being able to give back to them and give them that check means so much to them, and they see our personal, our contribution to them is not just monetarily, it's that support. And so through cadet we're able to do that. So it's critical that we grow the cadet contributions. As part of that, I'd like to recognize the 23 Presidents Club, members, and the others, if you will indulge me for that. So
Please do. Absolutely.
with a contribution of the maximum level of contribution is $2,000 per individual, and so with that you become part of the President's Club. So those members this year are myself, Joe Cummins, Nancy Sparks, Tim Sparks, David Moore, Kim Huffman, Shane Collins, Joe Cross, Vicki Kane Pfister, Bill Cole, Dan Renshaw, Ray Cottrell Jr., Dwayne Taylor, Dan Hughes, Tim Cannelly, Rob Marshall, Trey Marshall, Mike Hyde, Jeff Eichholz, Fred Tolsdorf, Tammy Coates, Mark Pogue, David Dunhauer, Bob Hook III, Kevin Collins, David Jackers, Tammy Goodwin, Tim Short, Carl Swope, Tom Gill, John Zimmer, Larry Craig, Jack Kane, Todd Justice, Travis Flaherty, Josh Cummins, Ed Hyde, Gary Haupt, and Steve Bachman. The next generation President's Club members are Alex Pogue, Tyler Jaggers, Philip Gill, Deborah Renshaw Parker. And then the Senate Club, House Club at $1,000 was Mark Schaefer, Dick Heaton, Patty Powell. Patron Club at $800 was Tasarla Tudor. So just a great, just a great thank you, big thank you to those who have given through to Cadet, and we need to increase that for this year, because again, we see that we've got still big issues to tackle, and we need these legislators.
We do. We need this engagement, Joe. Thanks for recognizing those. And I will just say, as we wind the year down and wind this podcast down, that you all, the dealer body, were could not have been better represented than our chair, Joe Cummins, this year. Joe was really helpful to me on a number of fronts, as we talked about our legislative session that we have. But the other thing that was, frankly, Joe's been very helpful on is the way he works at the ground level in the store. He's very engaged in the day-to-day of the dealership. So he's really in tune with the trends, what's happening, what they're seeing, the things that we need to be addressing, as a number of our dealers are that serve on the board and the executive committee. But it was especially helpful this last session due to the issues that we were dealing with. And frankly, we'll continue to deal with. The franchise system will remain under attack. There's always going to be direct sales issues that we're going to have to be looking at, and things that we haven't even thought about yet that we know will be coming down the road. So, Joe, at a personal level, I want to thank you for being as involved as you were. It was. I feel like we've established not only a really good working relationship, but a good friendship. It's been a really amazing year, and frankly, as I finish my third year here at KDA, it's hard for me to believe that's even the case, because each year seems to go faster than the last, if that makes sense. Maybe that's just part of getting older. I don't know.
Well, and Jason, I want to thank you too for your service, both in military and KADA front. We couldn't have done this without you, and it's just been a remarkable turnabout in the accomplishments we've made as a result of your leadership, and Caitlin and Melissa and now Sarah coming on board, as our resident attorney, which is going to mean a lot for us going forward.
That's right.
That's a tremendous coup to have her and all that she can do for us and all that she does for us.
Yep.
So again, just the changes we've made within this year are just fantastic. And again, it's all because of you that we have this direction, and some other things that you've been able to go on board with, some other committees that and lobbying and just being right involved in everything and in the thick of it. So I don't know that we could have any more of a finger on the pulse type situation than we do right now with you in there. So, and with what you've accomplished. So
I appreciate that very much. I'm fortunate. I've been able to work for car dealers now since the mid 90s after I got out of the Marine Corps. So I feel like I have a decent understanding both from my retail side and then working with this group here in particular. Joe, you mentioned earlier, we have the leadership with this committee. There's never been a better time to be a member of KADA. So again,
right.
If you know someone that's on the outside looking in, they need to get in the game. Now's the time. We're going to continue to have challenges moving forward, but I'm confident we're going to be well equipped to deal with anything that's thrown at us, because we are all better together, and we really have something special here in Kentucky.
That's right. And if nothing else, right on the coattails of some pretty strong people in there that again, is just an impressive group.
Well, with that, Joe, thanks for your time today. This will be our last edition of Kentucky Horsepower for 2023. 2024 is right around the corner. So on behalf of KADA, I want to wish you all a great happy new year, and we look forward to new and exciting things moving forward. But thank you for your continued support. We will continue to value it and need it moving forward.
That's right, Jason, and thank you again, and thank you for allowing me to participate. And just a reminder, we're in for a fun year next year with David Moore at the helm too. So it'll be a fun year with David.
That's right. There'll be an introductory one of these with David Moore here next month.
And be sure to stay
for those of you know David, it's going to be great. It'll be an exciting year for sure. And I just continue to feel blessed of the great folks that I get to work with. So, Joe, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you, Jason.
Happy holidays, everyone. Happy New Year. And we'll look forward to seeing you in 2024.